In my last talk, I mentioned how Jesus, in his day, asked this peculiar question, and that was, why do you worry? Why? And he must have been standing outside of worry, and he's looking at people who are clearly worried about things. I mean, they weren't dying, it wasn't the end of the world, but they were all taken up with worries. And he said to them, why do you worry about your clothes? Why do you worry about money? Why do you worry about where you live? And he just saw that people were under worry all the time. And one of the things I talked about was how there's like a visual, which is kind of helpful, that the earth, like the land where people live, the whole of humanity, live in a big valley, say. Let's just imagine it that way. I'm not saying it is, but it's just a good visual. And in that valley is a shadow man. And the shadow man is the one that causes the worries, shouts at people, and it makes them worry, makes them afraid, makes them rush around. And the humanity's trying to get enough resources and enough stuff so that they can drown the sound of the shadow man away, so he can't give them money worries and he can't give them house worries, because they've got so much. They don't have to worry. And people think that the more that they can hide and get up this hill, the more they can accumulate, the more they can get away from the shadow man, And I was just saying that the shadow man does not exist outside of the body. That's just a picture. The shadow man actually lives inside of your head. But the problem is, and this is something that I didn't mention before, and this is why we're coming back to it a bit, it doesn't matter how high up that valley you get, or how far away from what you think you can get away from worries, you have to understand that the thing inside your head that makes you worry will never ever change its nature no matter what you've got. It will always find something to worry about. So don't try and win the lotto or the pools thinking that's the end of my worries, because it will not be the end of your worries. You can have a nice big car, might as well worry in a nice big car than a little car, or you might as well worry in a big house than a little house. But I can promise you, you will not stop worrying, and you will not stop being under the curse of worry. The only reason why Jesus asked that question is that because as a master, an enlightened master, he knew how to escape the curse of fear and worry. He walked that way, and he talked that way, and he helped other people to be that way. One of the first things, many people who escape the realm of the mind and worry, the first thing they lose fear of is death itself, because they realise there's no such thing. The body might die, but their spirit, who they actually are inside, is not going to die anyway. It's just going to change location. It's just going to be somewhere else, but it's no tragedy, and they don't fear death. And yet people of the mind are terrified, all running up the banks of that valley, trying to get away. So let me tell you a little bit about the process here. It's usually good if you can win a victory. I said in my previous talk how good it is to possibly say, you know what, I've got so much on my mind, and it's just thoughts, okay, it's just ideas, there's nothing happened, it's just maybe, and it sounds very authentic. If you've got the courage, if you've just got the wherewithal, just say to yourself, you know what, I'm just going to sit in the face of this thing. I'm going to say to it, come on then, why don't you just do what you say you want to do? Why don't you just bring upon me the things that you say and not participate in the worry? That's the thing, see. When we challenge the worry, we're not participating in it. So if you did that, and then you found, strangely, nothing happened, the fear couldn't deliver, the worry never come up with what it promised, you think, oh, that's interesting. You got your first victory. But then you might do it again and again. But the thing is, in the end, you can't keep fighting all the time. I did that for some time. I kept sensing when there was worry and sensing when there was fear, and I'd stop I got a real sensitivity about it, and I go, ooh, because you could tell it wasn't real. It was a spurious idea that was just trying to get my emotion, get all my attention, trying to pretend it was me, trying to pretend it was real. And what I did was I just stood there, in a sense, just stood still in life and said, well, go on then. I'd like to see how you're going to do this, because you're just an idea. You're not real. You can't do this to me. And I proved over and over again that I couldn't do that. But in the end, you have to realise that you can't just keep having these fights. It's a good way to start. But you can't just keep having fights all the time like that with these nasty thoughts. In the end, we have to find a way of winning the war. Not just the little battles, but the war itself. And again, going back to the Bible, there's an interesting story about the Hebrews when they were led by Joshua and they went into the promised land. Just stick with me with the story. I'm not asking you to believe that it's true or be religious, okay? But it holds a principle and it's very interesting. When they were encouraged to go into the promised land, they had to do pretty much what I'm talking about here. They couldn't afford to listen to their fears, otherwise they'd be defeated. They had to ignore them, completely ignore them. So even though their minds said, we could get killed here, these people are far outnumbered us, they've got more weapons, they've got bigger cities, everything, it didn't look good. But these people, they knew something inside themselves that they could trust in, and that was their real life, the real connection with the heavens, the real connection with what life is truly about. And over a number of years, they won every little battle. And each town that they took, each city, was a battle, and they won. But it was won up here first. It was won in an attitude more than anything else. If Joshua at any point would have fallen foul of worrisome thoughts, the battle was finished. I talked about this before. There's a great example when one of the leaders of Rome, one of the emperors, he wanted to fight as a gladiator against the gladiators. Commodus, the son of Marcus Aurelius, and he wanted to make a big name for himself. He wanted to curry favour with the people, and so he used a great famous gladiator called Narcissus. And Narcissus, he trained with the emperor in private, and of course he was very skillful, and Commodus didn't stand much of a chance. So it's just as well they only had wooden swords, And there was a part in this program, it's just a dramatised thing, where they sat down sweating and they were drinking water, and Commodus says, I can see why you win, because you're so skillful, you're so good. And Narcissus said to him, well, it takes more than that, And Commodus asked him, well, what do you mean it takes more than that? Thinking that surely it's just skill in the arena. And he said to the emperor, I win my battles before I ever set foot in the Colosseum. And Commodus says, why? What do you mean? How do you do that, And Narcissus said to him, well, I call myself invincible. And I know I'm invincible. He says, but more than that, my enemies know I'm invincible too. He says, and by the time we get into that arena, they're already beaten. And that is a picture of much of how life is for us. If Joshua would have gone into the promised land thinking that he was only a grasshopper, there to be eaten, there to be beaten, then his enemies would have seen him as a grasshopper too, and they would have beaten him. But he didn't see it that way. He saw that he was more than a conqueror, and he became more than a conqueror, and he took the land. But this is what I'd like to say. We need to win our own little battle, don't we? I mean, you might be on a small wage somewhere, like I've been in my life, just a regular guy trying to get through life with children and not really knowing the way, haven't got a manual. God, somebody help me around here, and hopefully what I'm saying to you will help you. But if you can just get yourself a little victory, chalk it up, get yourself another victory, chalk that one up, and then begin to get a sense when you've confronted worry and confronted fear that you are not the fear and you're not the worry. See, that's the thing. The mind that brings these worries and fears is not who you really are. Who you really are is the one watching, the one who sits down in the grass and says to the shadow man, knock yourself out, big fella. Let's see if you can pull this off, because I'm not moving. I'm not running away from you anymore. And all of a sudden, fear has to go. Worry has to go. See, we have to be brave. We have to stand up like Narcissus and say, you know what, I know that I know that I know. If I sit down in the grass today, I will not be taken. I won't be pushed around. I'm not living my life like this. The fight's over before it even begins. But in the bigger picture, and this is the thing I wanted to say, okay? It says in the Bible, whether we can believe it or not, but this is what it says, that the heavens didn't allow Joshua to take all of the land in one go, because there wasn't enough of them, and they might have been devoured by wild animals. That's what it said. And so what happened was, they took the land piece by piece, until in the end there was one final battle. And that one final battle meant the whole war was won. The whole war was over. You've probably heard of Julius Caesar. Well, when Julius Caesar first was coming up through the ranks as a great soldier, and he had a reputation in Rome, he wasn't an emperor then, but he wanted to do something. And the one massive area that they couldn't take was Gaul, and it was still in the hands, which today is modern day France and Belgium and parts of Holland. The lines were different than they are today. And so he went off with his army, and he wanted to conquer Gaul. And in those days, I mean, Rome was like a collective, you know, the army was just together, and Rome was a place where it wasn't split into factions, it was one solid army. And when he went to Gaul, there was all little fiefdoms and princedoms and towns and all different places with different leaders and different allegiances, and they were often against each other. And what he did, Julius Caesar, was he picked them off one after the other. And of course, the more he picked off, the more victories, the more of the country he'd taken, until in the end, there was one final victory, which is quite a famous one, and he won that battle. So he had lots of battles, and then in the end, he'd won the war. He got there. And in a way, enlightenment's like that. When Buddha first wanted to find out, why does man suffer? It's a great inspiration to all of us, Buddha, in this. And of course, Jesus is as well. He actually left his riches. He's from a rich family and a big castle, and he had everything. He even had a wife and a son, and he went away. And it took him about 7 years to figure this out. And that was one battle after another battle after another battle, and in the end he won his war. He has to start somewhere, and it has to end somewhere. But on the journey, this is the thing, you have to realize that you will never change the nature of your mind. The mind will always worry, and it will always drag you down. It will always be in fear. It will set the emotions off. It will not change. And the skill that we learn, like a fighter in the arena, like Joshua going through the promised land, like Caesar going through Gaul, is we learn the skills along the way. We learn who the enemy is. We know the nature of it. And in my life today, you know, and I've been doing this for some years, don't get me wrong here, I'm not a perfect person here. I'm figuring it out, okay? We're all figuring it out together. But I've learned along the way that when fear rises up, and it seems so genuine, it seems so realistic, but I know it's just a thought, it's just an idea, and I go, you know, I don't think so. I can hear what you're saying, you know, but I don't think so. And the reason I can do that is because I know that I am who I am, and my mind is something else. It's not. The mind is not part of the part of me that's enlightened, that's part of the light of heaven. It's not the same. It tries to get in there, tries to be who I am, but it's not. I am me, and the mind is the mind. And so Jesus was one who managed to get himself the great victory. So he'd conquered his goal, or he'd conquered his promised land, the land of himself, which is what we're all called to do, really. How can we overcome this? It's like having a motorbike helmet on our heads in our life. And we only ever seem to be able to see through the worries of the mind, and oh God, and we kind of get used to it. We think that's the way life should be, but there's no need for life to be that way. We can get our victory. And so, what I'm saying is this is a journey. We start with one victory, yes, and another one, yes. And then we build up the sensitivity, and like Julius Caesar, we learn how to take one town after another town, and in the end you get the victory. And like Joshua, he never stopped knowing inside of himself, I will take this land. Like Narcissus before he walked in the arena, he knew something. He was convinced of something, And I know when I've sat down, when my worries, my fears have ganged up like monsters, like this, and I felt very small. Honestly, if you could just sit here with me now, I could tell you stories, all sorts of stories, and I've sat down in front of this worries of my mind and said, you know what, I'm not going to run. I'm standing in front of you, and I'm not running, and they run, they disappear, they diminish, and I learn a great lesson, and I head towards my great victory of war, having had many battles. So, as a follow-up to my last talk, I hope this in some way can be an encouragement for you in your life. Good luck.